Think I'm in. Can you hear me, Jeremy? I think there's viewers
you're
too.
Good.
If anyone's here, what's up? I think there's 7 viewers, which is amazing. I guess there's no point for waiting for other people since we are probably going to clip this. So let's rip it. Welcome to the first Bet on You improv show. I'm Dylan. I think you may know me. If you're here, you probably saw one of my posts. If you end up seeing any clips from this, you must be following me. I have a long background in the sports gambling industry. Was one of the first employees at FanDuel. Spent 4 years at DraftKings. Had a stint at William Hill. Had some consulting opportunities in between all of that. And then now I'm a vice president at Underdog. And the whole time in the industry, I've kind of been floating these different ideas of how to build community, how to help people land jobs. It's a very confusing industry. And so that's the premise of Bet on You. I'll touch more on that. But first, I'll introduce Jeremy. Jeremy's the co-founder of Bet on You. He's one of my best friends. He officiated my wedding beautifully. You'll hear the nice radio voice when he speaks. Jeremy was also a FanDuel customer support agent with me back in the day. We slummed it together, got our first apartment in New York City while we were customer support reps making, 35 grand a year. It was an amazing experience. And then he's gone on to a tech company called Exec Online where he's a beast and helping them grow. So yeah, that's the brief intro. What is Bet on You? The reason that we've done this is because of all the DMs that I've gotten over the last 5 years. I'd say hundreds a month at this point, mostly from young, early 20-somethings who want to break into the industry. I used to joke that every 22-year-old frat kid from a Big Ten school hits me up because they want to work at FanDuel or DraftKings. And I kind of have the same responses over and over. And so we're trying to figure out a way to funnel that. And from talking to peers in the industry, it seems like they're all getting these same messages that I am. So clearly there's a demand there. Nobody exactly knows how to tap in. There's not a feeder program at your business school. There aren't people that come in from the industry to help people land jobs. I think that's starting to happen, but and there also hasn't been any like content on social media around it. So I think I started tweeting about VIP stuff about a year ago, and VIP is a sexy term, and so it got some attention, and that's led us to here. So yeah, that's one, which is all the DMs and trying to help people actually find their way and land jobs in the industry. And then the second reason that we're starting Bet on You is the community aspect. My experience has been that the leaders in the industry, and honestly all the way down, it's like been very fragmented. There's a lot of competition. There's been rivalries that are public between people at different companies. I, for one, think it's kind of stupid. There's no reason that everyone can't rise up together. The whole saying, rising tides. I think work can be fun and you can have friends and you can all make a bunch of money and do cool shit. And so we want to build a community around that. I say this all the time, like we work in the fucking sports gambling industry. It's not that serious. Let's have some fun with it. So the community aspect, we're trying to figure out, there are these 3 groups of people that we're targeting. People who want to land a job, people who are in the industry, and then leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, tech founders as well. So that's what we're doing. I feel like that's the intro. What's up, Jeremy?
So happy to be here. You made you set a high bar in terms of my radio voice, so I'll do my best to meet that expectation. But yeah, really excited. Dylan and I have been kind of thinking through this concept for a while now, and we're really excited to bring it to everyone. And I'll be playing the role of MC for this conversation. We're going to kind of get into a little bit behind the curtain of an operator, and we thought a good segue for that would be the Super Bowl. So Dylan, you obviously were at the Super Bowl, got sick. I hope you're feeling better. Aside from kind of sitting you on the couch for a week and a half, how was the experience? I heard it was the best Super Bowl for operators in many years. So maybe you can get into a little bit about why that was. Was it just because Saquon had a bad game? Tell me more.
Yeah, basically, on the sick front, I'm all right. I'm get back to dunking on this mini hoop, which is amazing. not fully back to actual basketball, but I'm going to give it another week and then I'm going to get out there. Marissa Coleman, who I work with, she played in the WNBA. She's already talking shit about how I'm milking my flu for the last 2 weeks. So I got to get back out there. But anyways, yeah, as far as the result, it appears that this was the greatest Super Bowl of all time for sports betting companies. I think a huge part of that was Saquon unders and Travis Kelce unders and the rise of SGPs, and everybody has those selections in their bet types. I think it used to be even like 2-3 years ago where the biggest bet and the biggest bets and the biggest liability were straight bets. So you're just picking the Chiefs or the Eagles. Whereas now the results seem to be more player specific. So, every major operator reported record earnings on the actual Super Bowl. And I guess that's exciting for everyone. There's a lot of debate in the industry about like whether that matters, big wins, big losses, how you should take them. There's a ton of variance. And so there's some school of thought to if the players win, then that's actually better for the operators because they're going to keep coming back and playing. I think it probably doesn't matter that much, but it's a nice storyline that the books did so well for them. And then actually at the Super Bowl, like that was the biggest change for me over the last few years of going down Super Bowl week and feeling the attention on the sports gambling industry. Like it has gone to a whole new level. Even being at Underdog, which is a little less popular, obviously huge with Gen Z, but for the older crowd that's generally at the Super Bowl and for the sports business crowd that's there taking meetings, like the attention was so heavily on us, more than I've ever felt being down there. Like everybody wants to meet with the operators. Everybody's talking about what's in the news about the gambling industry. And 4 years ago, it felt like we had to do the outreach and try to get into events ourselves. Like now people are slapping wristbands on us. It's like just a whole different world. And that's probably coinciding with all these people who want jobs in the industry. You're seeing multi-billion-dollar tech companies that are cool. I've been comparing them to more like Google and Facebook than the Venetian in Vegas, which is the truth. And I think that's being felt at events like the Super Bowl, which is cool.
Yeah, and you recently had a newsletter post to like the Bet on You the Bet on You newsletter about just how operators prepare for the Super Bowl around a lot of it's probably like the biggest day in terms of like customer acquisition that the operators have like all year. Maybe talk like for a minute about that and how on the VIP side, obviously you're the VP of VIP at Underdog, whether it's kind of the same for that or if y'all are doing any more like personalized outreach to try to, you know, bring in some kind of bigger volume or bigger stakes in terms of the bets and whatnot.
Yeah, it feels like there are these tentpole moments that as any sports company looks at as like the big moments for acquisition. I mean, it is very true that the digital companies see big spikes in these pivotal moments, whether it's Super Bowl and then March Madness, and then probably not even another one until NFL kickoff, unless there's like the Olympics or something going on. But there are these tentpole moments, but in a digital environment now, it feels 24/7. I'd say VIP acquisition especially is not that connected to these major events. Like in my opinion, you're just as likely to get the guys betting 6-7 figures a game in the middle of summer as you are the day before the Super Bowl. But on the casual side and the way that the mass marketing works and the way that promotions are put out, obviously there's a huge emphasis on Super Bowl just because it's such a big day. And then you hope that you retain those customers that are testing you out for the first time on Super Bowl Sunday. But yeah, I feel like I don't care as much about the Super Bowl anymore personally. So maybe I'm jaded and I'm like looking forward to some random like Kings Bulls game. But yeah, it's if you work at any sports company, you're still probably super tied to these tentpole events.
All right, I think we can get into it a little bit here. I thought we would use the Super Bowl as a good jumping off point. We have a couple of slides that we wanted to use just to kind of frame up the conversation, but we don't want this to be just kind of like us talking at y'all through some slides. So if you have any questions that come up like drop them into the chat. And we're going to have some time at the end for any questions, and we can kind of make this a little bit more interactive. So,
oh, I see. So we can see the comments. We got my boy Ananth. I think I'm saying that right. What's up, man? And Genesis, of course.
indeed. All right. So, in terms of the Super Bowl, I think we wanted to just tee up maybe like 2 minutes on, at a high level, like how operators bring in money. A lot of this, there's a lot of misconceptions out there in terms of people who are maybe more unfamiliar with the industry. So maybe the folks that are on the line, this may be a little bit repetitive, but we wanted to kind of cover this really for just a few minutes before we get into kind of the actual departments within the organization and how they kind of impact revenue or reduce costs or what have you. So Dylan, maybe you can riff a little bit on just starting with the Super Bowl, for example, betting markets, and then we also have like fantasy contests as well as a popular contest type that the way the money flows is a little bit different. So maybe you can riff for like 2 minutes just to kind of frame out the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, we can go quick on this. I think if we need to like share with a beginner audience, this will be helpful. But I've long made the joke that when new people come in the industry from outside it, like they're selling shoes or they're selling B2B software, they always look at the P&L and they're like surprised at how the industry works. But yeah, effectively there are two-sided betting markets where the house has an edge on every single bet. And there's trading teams that are working round the clock to make sure that you're not getting sniped and that you're not going to lose money on these things. But over the long haul, you're just going to win because of the VIG. One of the misconceptions is that books are like evening out the money on each side of the bet. That's like a very, very old school way of thinking, and no one's really doing that nowadays, especially the major operators. You're basically never going to have enough liability for that to be a concern, except for maybe the Super Bowl. And that's really just because of all the parlays. It's not even because of there's so much money on one side. So that's, the companies are going to make money off of the VIG. And then in fantasy contests, it's the rake. So whether, any peer-to-peer game that companies are operating, even if you're running March Madness brackets, you're taking a certain percentage off of the top, and that's how you make the money. So I always say, like, in the example I used, you're not selling shoes. These are customers that are spending their money. They're trying to win, and the losses go into the revenue bucket, and that's the game that everybody's playing.
All right. With that tee up, I think we can get into kind of the main part of our conversation today. We wanted to frame up just some of the key departments and their responsibilities. So Dylan, I think, mentioned briefly that he and I actually started our careers in customer support, actually. But Dylan, maybe you can riff a little bit on, now that we have a sense of, again, how the operators actually make money with different contest types, we can kind of start looking at the various departments. We have 5 highlighted here, and just like at a high level, what they're responsible for.
Yeah, so this is kind of why we wanted to do this, just to see if we can get some video content about what these different departments actually do. I think it's easier to like talk through it. Eventually, we'll be able to have conversations with experts in each field who will know the ins and outs a lot better than me, except for maybe VIP, because that's my thing. But yeah, customer support, easiest department to break into just because there's so many seasonal roles. It's generally the biggest department at all of these major operators. For context, I would guess that the biggest books have multiple hundreds of customer support agents during NFL season. And then obviously there's a whole line of managers, senior managers, ops people. Now everybody use different software, and so they have to manage that. But the customer support reps, you're fielding the inbound tickets from customers. It's generally casual. I'd say the hot button topics tend to be around promotions. So it could be anything from somebody bitching about their promotion or saying something was unfair, or asking if there's any extra bonuses that they can get. Like, I remember back in the day, the most commonly solved ticket was the pending bonus tickets. And I think I hacked the system and I sorted all subject lines by pending bonus and just mashed all of them because I wanted to be number 1 on the leaderboard, which I was. Fuck you, Andy Green. I remember him. And so that's customer support. VIP is my world. This is, part account management, part customer acquisition, where you are really building one-to-one relationships with your most important customers. The top 1% of players in the sports betting industry make up about 50% of the revenue. We have seen cases where one player can make up a few percentage points in a state all by themselves. So that's how important they are. And that's why you want to build these relationships. It's also good from a responsible gambling perspective because you're actually knowing your customer, you're understanding their source of funds, and you're not, ideally, you're not being predatory. I know there's been a few cases where people have messed up on that, but the idea is not to do that. And so you're engaging with these players, giving them access to experiences and hospitality, giving them the exclusive bonuses that they want and deserve. And then there's a lot of competition in that field as well. And so VIP to me is it clearly is maybe the fastest growing department. It has the most eyes on it right now. Whereas 3 years ago, it felt like nobody at the companies even knew we existed. And now everybody's trying to get, tickets to the games that actually go to the VIPs. Next department would be just the marketing org. It's massive. There's a ton of different groups within marketing, especially at the major operators, like partnerships, like promotions. But the goal of marketing is brand awareness, acquiring new customers. Growth hacking is like a new word at these tech companies. So if you're young and you can figure out how to acquire at scale, then there's probably a place for you. And that's one where I think like the most people that hit me up, they want to work on marketing because the jobs seem the coolest. Marketing or partnerships, I would say the jobs seem the coolest, and they think that because they love sports that gives them an in. I think in reality, if you are wanting one of these marketing jobs, like that's the perfect one where you should just give your best ideas to everybody that you reach out to. Lead with value, come up with ideas on how you would market and how you would acquire customers. I think there's a ton of room to be creative there. And most people just, instead of coming up with their own ideas, they're just asking for the jobs straight away. And we can get more into that, but that's something I see with marketing. Risk and trading. This is probably another popular one. It's like math people who are super into sports. It seems like a fun job. I'd say there's less like actual line movement going on in today's world because of all the software. Thanks, Davis. This is cool that you can see comments. There's less hands-on line movement on traders. But it is still like an identification job. You're trying to identify trends. You're trying to make sure that you're not getting sniped, making sure that the algorithms are working, that there's no palps, which means there's no errors. And so it's arguably the most important job because you're on the front line of revenue. But I think trading is one where there might be less growth just because a lot of it is becoming automated. And then product and engineering, this is probably the area I know the least about. We plan on getting some senior people in these roles on and to talk about, like how did we build the original FanDuel app 10, 15 years ago? Like that's interesting to me. But product and engineering is building the infrastructure, building the app, keeping the lights on. When the apps crash on a Sunday, that's their fault. So everybody can yell at them. And that's when all the other teams that I mentioned unite and they, get pissed off. And that's kind of when engineering comes into the light. But, they're the ones building new features at Underdog right now. We're building a whole new concept to an app where we're combining pick'em and sports betting. And so that's all product and engineering, and they'll get the celebration once that goes well. So brief overview of the different main departments that people look at. And then within those, there's obviously a ton of different jobs.
Yeah, I think we have a couple follow-up questions on this that we wanted to use just to go a click deeper. I think the first one I'd like to get your just overview of is how are these departments goaled? Like, are there different goals for each department in terms of like if someone were to get an entry level role in marketing versus customer support, what does it look like in terms of like what they're focusing on every day?
Yeah, customer support from, even back when we were there, it's like a lot of NPS scores, which is your customer surveys. So having been in customer support, now if I call any customer support or if I'm at a retail store and they have me fill out a survey, unless the person was a complete asshole, I'm going tens across the board. Like I know that is what matters, even though it's so random at times. But NPS scores is one. Like how fast you're filling and answering tickets. That was a big one for us. And I always wanted to be number one. It's like, who's going to solve the most tickets in the shortest amount of time and not mess them up? And then there's probably, for support and VIP, it's like, how are you handling the escalated situations? And that's a lot of manager discretion, but like, I'm going to go through a bunch of emails and see how or texts and see how the team is writing and interacting with customers. And it's like, are you being a complete robot like it's 1992? Or are you talking with some personality, maybe throwing some riz in there and actually being, good at your job? So I think customer support is one where there might be less data around it, and I think that's fine. And same with VIP, because a lot of it is relationships. Marketing is probably more. I mean, depending on the role, like marketing is more data focused. It's like, what was the ROI on your spend? If you're given an allotted budget, how many customers did you acquire? What was the payoff? What type of customer was it? At Underdog, part of our marketing is our content team. So we have Gil's Arena, which is one of the biggest podcasts in the world. We can track how many customers come through that podcast. And then if we spend extra on promotion, what that actually leads to. So I think, and this is actually my first time being under the marketing org, so I'm getting a little bit more exposure to that. And we're kind of implementing some of that return on investment into VIP, where, if we buy a bunch of suites, what does that actually lead to? And then risk and trading and product and engineering, we'll probably have to go to an expert for it. I think risk and trading is pretty obvious. You're grading based on margin and not fucking up. And then product and engineering, it's, uptime, how quickly they're delivering new product. Jeremy, you probably know more than I do on this one. But I assume there's product managers that have expectations on when features are being launched, and then they've got to hit them. I do see some questions.
The launch is definitely on the product side, and then one of the more challenging things to do often is actually to like try to tie feature releases to some kind of like business metric, like revenue or like user satisfaction, like NPS, like you mentioned. A little bit challenging to do, but a lot of product teams really make an effort to kind of go the extra mile in terms of connecting their releases or their features to kind of hard business metrics.
Facts. Should we hit these questions real quick?
Yeah, let's take a beat and get to some of the questions.
So Ananth, in basketball, how does sportsbook set player prop markets? And then I guess that follow up there, do these principles apply? Oh, there's another one in there. Are these purely model driven? Do traders make manual adjustments? I'd say most of the answer to like both of these is that it's pretty much algorithmic at this point. The operators work. So right now we're talking about operators, but there's this whole other part of the ecosystem, which some people will call like the picks and shovels, which are these other businesses that connect to the operators that we pay a ton of money for their services. And the stats feeds and the odds providers are one of them. And we'll get deeper into that world at some point, but effectively you're building a relationship, paying for the data from an operator, and they're kind of spitting in these prop markets, like you mentioned, and that allows it so that the traders don't have to sit there and make manual adjustments. Now, there may be times, like you said, based on late news, especially in a sport like NBA, but generally that's going to be part of the market, and it's going to, you're going to be following the sharp accounts as you move the lines. So yeah, I would say it's not a ton of manual trading. It wouldn't be the Pinnacle API, although I'm sure the traders are monitoring the entire landscape of the industry, but it would be, like a Stats Inc. or Swish Analytics or Canby back in the day is what a lot of people used. And so it's these services, and they're like helping on the risk and trading side.
Yeah, maybe you can actually talk a little bit about the role of like risk and trading when they see like a bunch of action coming in, like obviously after all the lines are set,
Yeah.
and like how that like changes the lines like over the course of the day.
Yeah, I think that's another misconception too, about people thinking like, oh, if there's a lot of money that comes in on something, that's how the line moves. But really the lines are just moving based on who the better actually is. If a bunch of sharp accounts are betting, even, let's say they're betting small amounts because they're limited. If the sharpest NBA bettors in the world are betting the same market, that's likely going to lead to a line move. If I come in and bet 50,000 on an NBA line, it probably won't move at all, because I'm an idiot. So it's really just, that's where the account profiling comes into play. And risk and trading, that's like a huge part of their job, where they're trying to assess as quickly as possible whether a player, or really whether an account, is sharp or square, and what bet sizes you should take. But the lines are going to move based on sharp action there, and even that can become algorithmic, because you're um each account is going to have some sort of a rating, and based on what they do, that could impact the line. But again, if there's like a trader that's been doing this for 15 years that just listened to my explanation, they will probably be able to do it much better than me and say that I'm an idiot. But I think I know the general way that this works. David asks, I've never or I guess he said, I've never understood the appeal of a trader position if you have the skills. Yeah, I totally agree with that, David. I think a lot of these guys are betting on the side too. So, it's like you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and then you can still bet on the side. I know most of them are doing that. And like some of the more entry level trader, some of the more entry level trader guys are, they're probably not as savvy as you think, and it is more just like making sure that nothing gets fucked up, and they're kind of clicking buttons rather than being strategic. But yeah, all the seasoned traders I know make a bunch of money betting as well. um and then Brian asks, is there much, this is a good question. Is there much desire to innovate in fantasy sports with sports books and parlays taking all the focus? This is a great question, and we're kind of in the middle of this as Underdog right now. There's more, like the sports betting market is significantly larger. The sports betting landscape is changing, where Gen Z are betting more parlays than anything. So I think the desire to innovate is just around these like SGP lotto style game types. And I think that translates to Pick'em, because we can operate Pick'em in California and Texas. So like if we can create the SGP equivalent, um, the new game type that appeals to Gen Z, and it's legal, and it's a pick'em or it's a fantasy product, I think we'd want to do it. Like that's still a massive business. That's still a business that's making 9 figures a year. Um, you could run a standalone business without ever launching sports betting, and have a small team and do just fine. So I think there's desire to innovate, but like you're alluding to, the sports betting market is just so significantly larger, and you're kind of just preparing for Texas and California to eventually launch. Like that's the big upside for everybody.
Yeah, I think we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago. It feels like fantasy sports is kind of in this like weird zone right now, because on one hand, if you look at like how the money comes in, it's like if you size the contest appropriately, the sites will never lose money on fantasy sports contests. But I can kind of put myself in a meeting room with a bunch of like executives, and what they'll tell you is, okay, that's great news, let's just conservatively size all the contests forever and we'll never
Yep.
lose money. And so that's just that combination of things is kind of a recipe for the product just to be stagnant from like a growth perspective.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I think you understood his question better than I did. When I saw fantasy sports, I was thinking Prize Picks, Underdog. I now based on the way you answered it, he probably is referencing drafts like salary cap, OG, or best ball. And to that point, I agree that there probably is not much incentive to innovate, just because it's so capped at what you can earn. Like even best ball for us, it's like that's what made our name. That's why people love Underdog. That's why I love Underdog as a product. But it just like does not make as much money because it's a slower burn. Your money's tied up. Same with same with DFS salary cap. It's you're preparing every night till 7 p.m. and then once it locks, it locks. You can't just go bet the next game. So yeah, I'd be interested to see like there will probably be something that comes along where my gut would tell me it would not be the major operators, but it would be, a smaller group like a Run Your Pool or someone that is coming out with a game that they can figure out is legal, has a niche audience, which is us, like the fantasy nerds that are listening to this. Like we would all play all those type of games. Nice, Brian. Launch them. Let's go. All
All
right,
right.
cool.
I have maybe one follow-up question um, we can explore on this, and then we can move on to our next thing. So when we're thinking about these departments, one of the questions I really wanted to get your POV on is, are there any departments that are kind of, there's always a lot of tension between them just because of how they're goaled and what their objectives are? I can think of a few from our like CS days back in the day, but I'm curious how you would kind of think about that.
Oh man. Well, what were you thinking? Like customer support and promo or something?
Well, the example that comes to mind for me most like clearly would be like between like VIP and like risk and trading in terms
Yeah.
of like flagging
Yeah.
accounts or like trying to bet a lot, and just that tension that exists
Yeah.
between like them like flagging certain like betting patterns, but this is actually
Yeah.
someone that you're working with really closely to get money on, to get funds on site, and to kind of make sure they have a good experience.
Yeah, this is a good one. I don't think this has ever been talked about publicly, but like the VIP reps are going to build relationships and you're going to inevitably have people that you click with and they kind of become your friends. And sometimes you don't know that they're sharp. Like you're just doing your job. They hit VIP status. Some of these VIP hosts like are not gamblers and they're not in the weeds. They're not on Twitter. Like they're not, it doesn't even occur to them that this person could be a sharp bettor. And then all of a sudden risk and trading flags them. You never hear about it. And then the player is blowing you up like, what the fuck? It's saying my max bet is $27. And like 9 times out of 10, that player was probably expecting it. But there are times where people are following a service that they don't realize is going to get them limited. Or nowadays you're doing like top down betting through odds jam or something that you don't realize is going to get you limited. And so there is some of that tension. I'd say VIP teams in the past year and a half are largely taught to just trust risk and trading. That's their job. You have your job. But there have been times in the past where you meet someone new, everything seems amazing. They want to deposit $100,000. They're showing you bet slips from their bookie account that says they bet $5,000 a game. And like risk and trading is immediately skeptical. And so that happens. And I'm sure that these sharp groups will try to find VIP hosts that they think they can get a big bonus from and they think has pull with the traders. But in reality, no VIP host is convincing a trader to like not limit somebody. You're going to just trust the math. You're going to just trust the judgment. But yeah, that's a good one where there's sometimes at odds I've seen hosts get super upset because they thought they're working with a big player that they're close with, and then all of a sudden that person's pissed at them, and that can be uncomfortable. So yeah, that happens. The one that I thought of was customer support and promo, where like the mechanics of a promotion lead to a ton of support tickets or a ton of confusion. That's kind of how our pending bonus stuff was back in the day, where people thought that you were going to get an instant deposit bonus. In reality, you had to play through it X amount, and that leads to a ton of friction with customer support. So maybe that's the other one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I was going to call that one out too. Maybe fodder for a future newsletter post
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that.
We could do the worst promotions that have ever been existed in the industry. That'll be a good one.
Exactly. Um, Up next, I think we were actually going to flip through the Underdog job board. Dylan, if you're up for it, we can
Yeah, let's do
kind
a
of look,
couple.
look look at some roles that are out there currently for folks who are maybe interested.
Can you share your screen on this thing? Yep. Yeah, so I wanted to see if we could get a couple clips of me going through some of these entry level roles. Um, I think the first one that pops up is this promos and retention specialist, and like this is a role that I think there was a coordinator one too, or I guess associate right down there. I'm not even sure which one's higher or lower based on the salary. I guess the associate one is lower, so like that's an entry level job that someone straight out of college could theoretically get. The way I would go about landing it is sending a message to anyone on that promotions team, probably not the senior people, but associates, manager level, coordinators, and hit them up on LinkedIn and hit them up with ideas for the role. These are the 5 promos that I would run. And like you can use ChatGPT to give you some ideas, but actually write it out in your style and like nobody does that where they're going with ideas. If anyone wants that type of role, they're just saying that they love sports and they work hard. And you can just separate yourself so easily by taking 30 minutes, giving 5 ideas. I'm sure that these people have already thought of them, but it's just showing that you have some sort of creativity. And, even better would be coming up with ideas that you've never seen before and promotions that you think would drive either customer acquisition or a good experience. But yeah, this role is probably more on the execution side. They're probably the ones that are, an idea comes down the pipe, maybe they're involved in the process, and then they're the ones that are either segmenting out which customers that this offer goes to, or they're helping write the copy if a company doesn't have copywriters. And so they're probably doing like kind of the dirty work on actually getting these promotions out, working with customer support on the terms of the promotion, working with compliance on the terms to make sure it's legal. But it's the type of marketing role that I don't usually get hit up about that people could truly get right out of college. What else do we have? Can we scroll?
I'll just scroll through these. You just let me know if you want to stop on one.
Yeah, let's see if there's any other like associate level. Um, Maybe not finance. Yeah, AML associate. That's another good one. I like that we have the salaries. I think most people do that now. But yeah, AML, anti money laundering, like compliance and regulatory is such a huge part of the industry. Every single thing we do has to go through compliance. Like people think it's the wild, wild west. It was in 2014, but now it's just a totally new age. If we can't even market to a golf club list without making sure that it meets compliance. So this type of AML associate, a lot of it is just going to be monitoring flags from customers. If there are transactions that seem fishy, if somebody's having a ton of denied deposits, if somebody's source of funds doesn't match up or their address isn't matching up with their name, like you're basically looking for signs of fraud. There is a ton of fraud in this industry. There's a ton of multi-accounting in this industry. And you're not doing it because you're a narc. You're doing it because the company can get fined if you let these people bet through you. Like it's a regulatory nightmare to get caught with that. So that's why these roles are so important. Something like this is I see this as a foot in the door industry as well. Maybe somebody who's thinking like they could go to law school down the line and they want to learn about regulatory and compliance. Maybe it's the same type of person that would want to land a customer support job, but they want to start in a different department that's more fascinating to them. Maybe it's someone who watches a lot of financial crime documentaries on Netflix. I was a criminology major because I liked murder documentaries. That didn't really serve me well, but I think this job is another one that people could get right out of college. Software engineer, Ruby on the Rails. That's one that someone's going to have to teach me about. I've heard Ruby on the Rails, but it's above my pay grade. Accounts payable specialist, that's going to be some finance and accounting person. Let's go to the next page. I think the data analyst roles are interesting. That's like, a bit of a more senior role, but that's another one. I think Brian said it earlier. David said it earlier about like if you have the skills to be doing this is another one that like a sports obsessed person who even likes gambling and is a winner in fantasy sports, like these data analyst roles will get you a steady paycheck. You'll learn about the ins and outs of business. Being on the marketing side, you're going to be the one that someone like me reaches out to and says, yo, can you pull the data on the most recent promotion we did? Like, what did that actually lead to? And there's also some creativity that goes along with that, in terms of segmenting out players and trying to give insights to your stakeholders. So if you think about that Gills Arena example, like this analyst might go through all the data from all the promotions and all the shows and see at what times, are we seeing a spike in customer acquisition? During what segments are we seeing a spike? And then how do those players perform long term? So there's a bunch of different analyst roles. I think the bigger companies, probably have 50-ish, maybe more analysts. And then the smaller companies, have a dozen or so. But I think that's an important one too. Let's hit Brian's question maybe and then move to the next thing. How are companies dealing with the current negative feedback in states like Illinois regarding prize picks? This kind of dates back a few years. I like the heat seems to be less on the pick'em games. Like I think we're feeling it less at Underdog. We feel pretty comfortable about where we're at and the legalization around what we're offering. I assume prize picks feels the same. There are bigger fish to fry with regulators at this point when it comes to the sweepstakes companies who are, offering something that's even closer to sports betting. And then the prediction market companies that, like a Kalshi, like a Poly Market. So I think the focus is probably on those on those companies and to see if they're compliant. I find it fascinating that it's like these companies are trying to find loopholes to operate. It's really hard to build a sports book. I always say 2 MIT kids can't just launch a sports book and compete. It's impossible. So I don't know. I find that whole side fascinating, but I don't think, to answer the question, like I don't think we're super concerned with how certain states are deciding, to approach pick'em right now. I think that'll all work itself out. And we got my twin, Barry Dillon, spells it the same way. Unreal. Would you highlight things learned from the betting side and following the industry? I'm looking to change industries. Sports betting with 2 years in data, but not sure how much to highlight. Oh, great. So, yeah. So I think you're asking like, if when you're trying to change industries, how much would you highlight your own betting knowledge? Is that the question? That's actually a really good question. I get that a lot on VIP where people like are hesitant to mention that they've played through a bookie account, or even sometimes it's like hesitant to mention that in college they were a bookie. I think we're past the stage of like that being, taboo. Everybody knows gambling existed before legalization. You're not going to post that all over your application, but yeah, I think you do. Yeah, I think you do want to reference that, especially in the one-to-one conversations on social media with people. Like, I think that's going to prove that A, you know what you're talking about, and B, you're super passionate about the industry. I think that helped me break into the industry where like I was a gambler. I was a losing gambler, but I was gambling and I was following it super closely. And at the time, there was even less people doing that. I still think you have an edge by understanding the industry because most people don't. So I would definitely reference that you have this experience, especially if you're looking for an analyst role, a trader role, a VIP role. Like the odds are those people, especially in leadership positions, also have that experience that you do. And they're also the ones paying attention. Maybe in more traditional roles like an engineer or marketing, there's less of that. But yeah, if you're applying to a role that is dealing with the end user, which is the gambler, I would for sure highlight all of that knowledge, especially in like a LinkedIn DM or an email that you're sending, or if you get on a phone call with someone, I'd go even deeper into that.
All right. We can spend a little bit of time on any other questions, but do you want to just kind of walk folks through kind of what we're building,
Yep.
what we're going to be focused on this year?
Yep. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
I'm gonna pull up the like the slides again. Just let me know when you want me to like advance them, and I'll
Okay.
drop off so you can have the stage to yourself.
Nice. Yeah, get out of here. My boy Sam. So let me do this first, Sam. So we're going to talk about what we're actually building here. So I referenced in the beginning that I think Bet on You is going to be for three groups of people. It's going to be for people who are trying to break into the industry for the first time, college students right out of college. It'll be for people who are in the industry, maybe lower levels, entry levels, manager below. And then the third is going to be industry execs, leaders, tech founders, and that will be more community based. What we know we can help with right now is the first group. Like, I know for a fact that between the information that we're going to provide, the connections we have, like, we can land people these entry level jobs across the industry. And I don't think there's anyone else doing that. So that's what we're going to focus on to start. That's what we're going to focus on this year. And so we want to launch our first cohort, which is not going to be just anyone. It's going to be like the sharpest young people who want to do this. They really want to land a job. There will be some sort of an application process, and we're going to come up with, between 30 and 50 people for that first cohort. It's going to launch in May. That's like the charter group. And we're going to help with, building network, access to resources, like truly making the connections that are relevant to the job that you want. I've been doing this for a while. I have done a ton of smiling over the last 10 years to make a lot of friends in the industry. And I think people are going to be willing. A lot of people have already reached out to me, willing to help, willing to provide internships specific to this charter cohort. I think my mic just dropped. Willing to do interviews to people just for this charter cohort. And so that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to do 2 more of these open sessions, which are fine. We're going to get some clips out of this that we can put out on social media to spread the word. But we're going to start taking applications pretty soon. So I'll be posting that on my social media. We'll be sending it out through the newsletter. If you're listening to this, and you are in that first group, you will get in. So you should apply. Tell us that you were on this first call. And yeah, it's going to be completely free to join. We eventually do want to launch paid products and turn this into a business where we're providing like insane value, but we want to prove that we can land a bunch of you jobs first. So if you can get into the first cohort, then amazing, because you're just going to get all those benefits for free and be a part of the community forever. Yeah, that's going to be this charter cohort. So we'll send out more information soon. Brian's old. What? You launched the first DFS game ever? That's sick, man. So you're probably competing with Nigel Eccles when he was in, I guess, Ireland or Scotland at the time. Yeah, there's space in the industry for the over 50 crowd. It's harder to land jobs. I mean, it's just most likely, but I mean, if you have that experience, I don't know whether you were doing it on the marketing side or you actually built the thing, but like if you built the thing, I feel like anybody would want to hire you as a product person. There's all these sweepstakes operators. There's a lot of the picks and shovels. Like, yeah, of course there's space. If you have experience and knowledge about the industry, that's still lacking. It's just about getting you those conversations and you presenting what you've actually done. Because by the way, like nobody's done anything in this industry. It's so new. It's so young. A lot of the suits that come in are completely, from outside the industry. So I think if you have experience, that's already a leg up. Who's the most important person to contact when you see a job on LinkedIn? So I have a strong opinion on this one. I think young people go far too hard at senior executives and HR people for this. I think you should be targeting associates, coordinators, maybe managers, but targeting people closer in age to you who don't get hit up as often and doing what I said earlier, which is providing them ideas, providing them value. Like you don't need to ask for their time. Just tell them that you're interested in the role. Give them a bunch of ideas. Like that alone is going to separate yourself more than 99.9% of people. I promise you. You could look through my inbox and you will see the same message over and over. And then you get someone like my boy Sam Roberts, who I see in here, and it's like he wrote me a bunch of creative emails. So it's like if you just do that, you're going to get conversations. And if you do that to an associate or a coordinator, you're for sure going to get conversations. So that's what I would do. I would do your research, mention something about their high school sports career, give them some value, and yeah, go to town. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like most people are busy. So if they don't answer you, don't take it personally. Just shoot your shot. I find it fun. I still send cold DMs all the time. And then the last one from Sam, how often do ideas get implemented? What's the best way? That's a great question. I think innovation is hard because of the compliance and regulatory aspect. Like I don't think it's about leaders not listening to the young people. I just think it's really hard to implement anything new. But if there's ideas around marketing and promotion where you can be creative and take shots, a lot of that stems from young people. We have a guy on our team, Sam Berman. He started in college. He's effectively our head of brand. Like he comes up with ideas, we test them out. I think he's like 24, 25 years old. So on the marketing side, there's more room. If you're talking about like game types, that's where it gets tougher because it's just so hard to implement. And game types are fun to think about with your friends. And so a lot of people reach out and say, I have this idea for the coolest game. But there's probably 3 to 4 reasons, whether it's like tech constraints or compliance constraints, why they may not be able to happen. But yeah, best way for voices to be heard is what I said earlier. I think not enough people lead with riz, value, and creativity in their messaging. It's like for some reason, I would have thought that it would have changed by 2025, but I'm still getting messages that look like you learned in freshman year orientation in college, which will like never work. But you don't do that, Sam, so you're good. All right.
Awesome. If there aren't any more questions, I think we can, just give folks a preview of what we have coming up. And Dylan mentioned we're going to be getting like the form out for anyone who wants to participate in like our first charter cohort with us and help build something awesome.
Yeah. We're going to do 2 more sessions like this that'll be more specific. We may not, it might just be a similar format, honestly, for you 13, 15 people that have been on here. Like we're just trying to get a bunch of video content, practice talking about this shit, see if we can get some clips, and then want to start having guests on and having even better information. So feel free to join those next 2. Like they'll be fun and be specific, but I think we can get some good clips out of them. And in the meantime, for you guys, if you want to be a part of that first cohort, just like go through the application, DM me, and we'll make it work.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I would also say like we're focusing on early career folks because we think we can provide immediate value, but we're thinking about a lot of different groups as well for when we eventually do launch like a paid community. And so if you don't fit into that like early career group, like you can still reach out to us. Like we are very open to hearing feedback, bouncing off ideas, and just trying to better understand like how we can provide value for other groups as well as we get more into this.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, we see, there's all these communities that I see that are super valuable in sports and tech and in entrepreneurship, and nothing like that exists for the sports gambling industry. And I think that we're uniquely positioned to do that and have fun with it and provide a lot of value. So like, I think it can be both a fun thing and also a career advancement thing for anybody. And I'm friends with a lot of these founders in the industry that are, coming up with the next startup, and there's an appetite for all of them to be a part of it. And the ultimate goal is to blend all three groups, where we're having, the college kid who's brilliant and is already beating sports books paired up with the founder of the next Prize Picks and Underdog, or the founder of the next Geo Comply, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. Like we want to be able to pair everybody up and do some cool things together. All right, I'm spent. Appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean,
overall was 6.5. We smashed it, by the way.
Yeah, we're really excited and appreciative of y'all for joining. We'll definitely be in touch in terms of different ways that people can participate, contribute to kind of the stuff that we're building. And yeah, just stay tuned to Dylan's Twitter, LinkedIn, the newsletter. We'll be in touch, and we're looking forward to collaborating more with all of y'all.
Yep. Thanks, guys. And if you see any of these clips on social media, just comment and say we're in it. Yeah, lead with Riz. All right. How do we end this thing? I don't even know. I think you have to do it.